The Senate committee released details about its version of the tax bill yesterday, which breaks significantly from what was promised by the House and the Trump administration. The Senate plan, for example, includes this: 7 tax brackets instead of 4, a 38.5% top tax bracket. So they lower the rate on the top earners from 39.6 to 38.5, a $1 million mortgage deduction cap, and a 1-year delay for the 20% corporate tax rate. Here's what Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise had to say about that yesterday, about the phasing in of the 20% corporate tax rate.
I think the sooner we get this, the 20% rate, the better it is for the economy. Obviously, right away is better than a year, but a year is better than, obviously, a longer phase-in.
In our bill, we've been working really hard to make sure that those tax cuts are immediate. I'm not going to criticize the Senate because I'm encouraged that they're actually moving a bill forward.
All right, the House Ways and Means panel also voted that the Republican tax bill out of the committee yesterday, so it's moving forward. The measure is set to go to the House Rules Committee next, and that's happening next week before heading to the House floor. Joining us now is New York Congressman Chris Collins. And Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for weighing in here.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Maria.
So there are some differences here between the House and the Senate tax bill. Will you be able to compromise on passing a bill by the end of the year?
I believe we will, and I was quite encouraged, actually, when I saw the details of what the Senate released. And there are differences, and we would take that to conference. But, you know, I'd say it's, 90% the same as ours with little tweaks and nuances. And I find that very encouraging. We're certainly on pace to pass ours out of the House next Thursday. And I've said all along, anyone who voted for the budget, the 50 senators, the 216 House members, that was really a proxy as a yes vote for tax reform. We all knew voting for the budget was the mechanism to get tax reform done. And so I really do believe the 216 House members, including myself, that voted for the budget, are definitely looking for a way to get to yes on Thursday in the House. And I do believe the differences are not that significant right now between the House and the Senate.
Yeah, but it was such a narrow win on the budget. I mean, really. And you know that there are New York congressmen right now who've said no because of the state and local tax deduction. It's used heavily by New Yorkers. The government received roughly 3.4 million returns with deduction in the year of 2015, according to the Tax Policy Center. So do you feel that you have the votes, even though the Peter Kings of the world are going to be no as you eliminate that deduction?
Yeah, I mean, I do, Maria. In my district, for instance, 35 to 40% of the taxpayers who itemized their returns did take the SALT deduction.
Right. And
they averaged about $16,000 in their itemized deductions. Well, by doubling the standard deduction to $24,000, less than 2% of my constituents are going to itemize. Hence, the SALT deduction is meaningless in the 27th Congressional District, and I would say that's true throughout upstate New York. If there is an impact, it's in the city or it's in Long Island where Peter King resides. We all have to vote our districts, but 7 of the 9 Republicans, or at least 6 of the 9 Republicans in New York, less than 2% of our constituents are even going to itemize, so it's a non-issue.
So, Congressman James Freeman here with the Wall Street Journal. I'm wondering, would we see then, as you kind of members learn about the details here, would you see maybe even more support of this in the New York delegation than for that budget vote?
Yes, I think as we move this through and people are now running the numbers, I did this up in my district, typical family with a $300,000 home and $80,000 income, family of 4, who was itemizing and taking $16,000 of deductions is now going to save $1,800 using the standard deduction. And when you run the numbers and you see that 95% or more of our constituents and taxpayers are going to pay less next year, and they're going to see that in their paychecks starting in January.
Well,
it's
but that's not what Steven
yes.
Mnuchin said yesterday. I mean, yesterday I spoke with Steven Mnuchin, and he said, yeah, there are many people who will get a tax increase.
Well, when you say many people, I'm saying 95% will not. We'd like it to be 100% are going to pay less. But there's always the outlier, and we can't change that. But I tell you, I'm going to stand with 95% of the hardworking
New
Yorkers
what he said.
in New York 27.
Here's what Steven Mnuchin told me yesterday about this very topic.
I do hope that this sends a message to the state governments that perhaps they should try to get their budgets in line. And the question is, why do you need 13 or 14% state taxes?
So you think it's 95% then, Congressman?
Well, certainly in my district, it's 98%, and it may be different in Long Island. It's a totally different dynamic on Staten Island. But again, 95 to 98% of my constituents are going to take the standard deduction. Therefore, the SALT deductions are totally meaningless. And when you consider that the alternative minimum tax, which doesn't exist any longer, was based solely on the government clawing money back from people who took the SALT deduction. So people weren't getting the full benefit anyway.
That's
Anyone
a good
paying
point. Yeah.
the AMT was not getting the full benefit of the SALT deduction.
Kevin Kelly.
Yeah, Congressman, I'm glad you bring that up because the AMT was developed to actually tax 155 of the top 1% back in the 80s during the Reagan administration. Now it afflicts 4.5 million people. So I think there's going to be a good reprieve in your county. But one of the things we're not talking about is small businesses. I think this tax plan is a great boon for the American ingenuity and for people to take on more risk and actually put more capital back into the United States. I know up in your county you have tons of small businesses. You were a small business owner yourself. How do you think this is going to affect actually how do you think it's going to affect the economy next year, redeploying capital? And is this really a small business tax plan as opposed to focusing on the big corporate rate?
Well, it's both big corporate and small business, and we know the jobs creators in the future are small businesses. And anything we can do that the small business owners keep more of their money and they don't send it to Washington to be wasted is going to be money reinvested in growth. Every small business guy gets up in the morning and says, how do I grow my business? Whether it's investment in machinery and equipment, marketing, product development, R&D. And so there is the economic engine that we need growing, and it's the small business owners who currently today on a pass-through for a successful small business are paying 39.6%, and in some cases adding the 3.8% Obama tax, depending on whether it's passive or active income. And on that basis, this is going to be a huge job creator for also the larger corporations. But I think we're all focused on the small businessmen.
Yeah, good point.
In America.
Congressman, name one thing that is in that Senate bill that came out yesterday that would keep you from voting for this bill, for this tax overhaul.
There is nothing in the bill, Maria, that would stop me from voting for it. It's a necessary to get our economy going so our kids can live the American dream. Our base, America, we promised it. We've got to deliver it. We didn't do it on health care. We better do it on tax reform.
Yeah,